Welcome to VetterView. My name is Cesar Rubio, and I created this podcast to show some raw experiences and challenges service members face during service and transition to the civilian world. I'd not only like for us to be able to share our experiences, but offer advice to others who could be facing similar challenges and give people a different perspective and understanding to the challenges we face.
This is going to be Better View episode 11. Welcome, everybody. Got my guest here, Jeremy Caldwell, right? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, that's how you say it.
Yeah, and
Nobody in the South can say it, but everyone everywhere else can.
everybody else can fucking say it, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to tell the people who you are, man, and what branch you served in and the times?
Yeah, Jeremy Caldwell, originally from Colorado. I'm permanently stationed at Fort Living Room in Florida now. But joined the Army in 2001. About 9 months before September 11th, so that didn't have any factor on me joining. I was in until October of 2009. That's when I got medically retired. I was a combat medic. I did 11. My number, you said episode 11.
Yeah, fuck you up.
I did 7.5 years with the 101st Airborne, 502nd Infantry, frontline infantry medic. And then I spent the last year and a half, 2 years-ish of my time working in the hospital at Triple Army Medical Center in Hawaii, otherwise known to most everybody who knows it as Crippler, because it's one of those lovely Army hospitals.
Okay.
Been out since 2009. Been officially retired now for like 5-ish years. Got wife, 3 awesome kids, 2 little midget furball dogs, and living the dream.
Fuck yeah, man. It's good to hear that you're living the dream for sure. So you said,
I mean, nightmares are dreams too sometimes, right?
Yeah, definitely. So you said you joined 9 months before 2001, huh? 9/11, the attack that happened. And what is it that got you into joining? Do you have family in the military, or was it just you know?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was very little bit of family in the military.
Sure.
My stepdad, but he's always been my dad. He had a bunch of family that served in the Army Reserves and Air Force Reserves and stuff like that. And so I always kind of had that around.
Mm-hmm.
And my great uncle, was a commander in Vietnam. He actually just recently passed away about a month ago now.
Damn, sorry.
From Agent Orange. I had that stuff, but for me, it was more, I grew up, we weren't super poor, but we weren't well enough.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to get out and see some stuff. I loved Colorado, but I was getting tired of seeing the mountains all the time.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get out and see the world a little bit. And I kind of screwed up high school a little bit. My grandfather had some medical issues, and then I had some I don't want to attend issues. I got my degree, but I wasn't really good enough for college, even though before I totally screwed it up. I probably could have had a college athletic scholarship. But that's all right. Shit happens. So I just wanted to get the hell out of Colorado for a little bit. And the Army for me was the best bet. I looked into all the branches. Marine Corps didn't do their own medical, so that kind of killed the Corps for me.
Yeah.
Air Force wasn't going to let me in because I was quote unquote too fat for the Air Force.
Right.
Even though my ASVAB scores were fine for the Air Force.
I was going to say I was too stupid for the Air Force.
Most everybody. Unless you're like a freaking Men's Health or a freaking Maxim model, you're not making it.
Yeah, exactly.
But then, and the Navy, like, no hate against the Navy. I just didn't want to spend that much time on the water.
Yeah, that's fair.
So the Army served it because I grew up in Colorado. There ain't no Coast Guard, and
yeah,
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what got me to join, was just getting the hell out of Colorado for a while.
Right, and you know what's funny? I was talking. One of my coworkers asked me yesterday. He was like, his dad was in Vietnam. He was asking me, "What do you think is one of the reasons that people are joining the most?" And I was like, "Well, from the people that I've spoken to, for the most part, it's been either they're from an area, or their lives they don't have an area where there's much opportunity, or there could potentially be opportunity, but there's nothing really going on," which was my circumstance, right? I was in an area where there wasn't much. It's fucking just like Iraq, a desert. In California, shit, it's pretty close to 29 Palms, which is a great base down there.
South Cali.
Yeah. And I told him, and I was telling him, yeah, a lot of guys and gals, they don't necessarily have anything going on, or if they do, they just don't. They think about it, and they use the GI Bill that the military gives you. They try to take advantage of the things that can open some doors for you, which is it's crazy how you're another one that didn't necessarily have everything handed out to him, and you wanted to get out of the area where you're from, like most of us. I also.
Yeah, I mean, don't get it wrong. Like, I was basically an only child and one of only 2 grandkids. So, I mean, I didn't want for a whole lot growing up, but it's not like my mommy and daddy were handing me cars and shit either. But,
right.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like job prospects and stuff, I'm from Northern Colorado, man. It's not like down in Denver or something like that. Your choices are to go to college if you can get in there, but pretty much everything up there, and it's changed a lot since I left, obviously, because my hometown's like a big old college town now. Wow. But everything around me was hard labor, agricultural stuff, and I was never a cowboy, and hard, like true factory and freaking that kind of hard labor never really appealed to me. I saw what it did to some of my other family members, so that just wasn't gonna happen, man.
Yeah, I saw that shit way too often as well, and it just wasn't for me. And before we started going, you said that you went in with the idea of making a career out of being in the service, right?
No, I didn't go in with the idea of making a career out of it, but after, I'd say probably 2 or 3 years in, I re-enlisted at my 3 years, mostly because I didn't know what the heck I was going to do if I got out.
Yeah.
But then, right about the 4-year mark, right after we were getting back, it was about halfway through my second tour in Iraq. I was like, this is what I'm meant to do. I liked helping people. I liked the way the medical corps gave me the opportunity to serve, because service has always been something that I've been passionate about.
Yeah.
And I love soldiers. I love the lifestyle. It was simple yet incredibly rewarding.
Definitely.
So I determined then that I was gonna be a lifer, and then about 3 years later they told me I wasn't.
Yeah,
but that's all right.
That's just how it is in the military. It's a MedSep, or I had one of my guys also get MedSep, but unfortunately sometimes that's just the way it goes.
Yeah, I mean, and they gave me kind of an option.
Yeah.
When I did get my med board, my MedSep, whatever. They told me that I could have stayed in, but I would have had to stay like in a non-deployable hospital setting for the rest of my career, and that was not going to happen.
Yeah.
For as much as I enjoyed hospital, learning the hospital stuff, that was not where I wanted to be. You lost a lot of responsibility, and you lost a lot of your freedoms to help people, because of course there's doctors and nurses and everything above you.
Right.
They get the medical priority.
So when you first enlisted, 9/11 happens. Fucking, what was going through your mind? You were like, oh shit, we're gone.
There was, truthfully, on 9/11, when 9/11 went down, I was actually working on a training rotation in the emergency room at Fort Campbell. So we were actually doing a cardiac code and giving some guy CPR when most of it was going down. And we got done with that just in time for me to walk out and see the second plane hit. So I didn't know a whole lot of what was going on, and there was already so much adrenaline and everything flowing from the other event that, I didn't really know what to think. And at first, no one knew what exactly it was, and blah blah blah, all that other BS. So I knew something was going to go down. And being part of the 101st, it's, the 101st and the 82nd are generally the first two Army units that go somewhere when shit hits the fan. So, I knew something was going down. I didn't know what or where.
Right.
For me, it wasn't, I wasn't overly worried or anything like that. I was kind of actually more, jazzed up to finally get to go do my real job instead of sitting around fixing trucks all the time.
Yeah.
But we still had, because I didn't actually go, because a couple of the other brigades went to Afghanistan, so we actually had to wait until March of 2003 to go to Kuwait for the initial invasion of Iraq. So.
So you were a part of the initial invasion?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You want to go into that a little bit? How was that? How was it starting off with that?
And hot. That's all it really was. We actually left. It was kind of funny. It was generally, I think it was end of February 2003. My platoon sergeant for the infantry company that I was with called me up and he's like, "Hey man, what are you doing on Saturday?" And I was like, "It's my 20th birthday, man. So I don't know, probably having a couple drinks and hanging out." And he's like, "Man, nah. How about you go on a trip with me?" And I was like, "All right, where are we going?" He was like, "Kuwait." I was like, "Fuck it, let's go." So we flew to Kuwait on my 20th birthday. And then, Kuwait was pretty much, if you talk to anybody who was in Kuwait for that month or two beforehand, it was nothing but freaking hot dust storms and freaking mop gear all the damn time because they were scudding the hell out of us and missing the hell out of us. And then when we finally got the orders to roll, I don't remember exactly what day it was. It was late March, early April, something like that.
Right.
It was your typical freaking Army infantry thing. We're a giant airborne air assault unit, and we all loaded in the back of a C-130 and flew a little bit, and then we loaded, what was it? I think we had 45 or 50 dudes in the back of a Chinook helicopter, all just freaking jammed in there like sardines. And we flew just outside of Najaf in full mop gear, which was excellent. We didn't have the masks on, thank God. But yeah, we were in full mop for like the first, I want to say 3 or 4 days. So you can imagine an infantry unit trying to move in full mop. I think I ran out of IV bags within like the first 6 hours.
Yeah, of course.
Nobody was really ready for it. But luckily I was good at resupply. There's not a lot I can really say about my first tour.
Right.
We got in a couple of firefights, and of course there's, you follow any of the Army side of it, there was the big battle just outside of Najaf. Weirdly enough, like my unit was there, but we were kind of on the far right side, I think. So we weren't really super involved in that one.
Right.
But I mean, we got little firefights and stuff throughout it. But generally, the whole 03-04 deployment was just a lot of freaking missions that 90% of them didn't really seem to come of anything for me.
Right.
There's only a couple of real significant events that happened. My divorce was finalized, which was awesome.
That's a good one.
Because I caught her sleeping with the engineer battalion about 5 days before we left. But my divorce got finalized, and our sergeant major, our battalion sergeant major, and his driver, he was one of my infantry guys who got pulled to be his driver. Sergeant Major Wilson and Ravago got killed, and then we lost a guy from Charlie Company. I was with Bravo Company. But other than that, like up until like right near the end is when they started using IEDs and all that stuff. I mean, we were up in Missoula, so it wasn't beyond stupid hot.
Yeah.
It was actually kind of, it was hot, but it wasn't freaking Baghdad.
Yeah. It was 1:30.
So I mean, it was pretty unremarkable. We kind of, I wouldn't say it was fun, but
Right.
It wasn't, we weren't getting shot at every day. We weren't freaking encountering a whole bunch of IEDs and all that other crap like we were in 04-05 or 05-06. Sorry.
You say it so casual. Oh, just a few firefights here and there. like it's a fucking.
Yeah, it's actually funny. We had I think everybody did, but we had this little Iraqi guy who came and did like satellite phone on top of our building that we were in, and I actually met my wife through a dating website. My current wife, met her through a dating website while I was over there.
Oh shit!
And it was probably like 2 months before we came home, but I went up there to call her, and we had the Iraqi police department right behind us, and they got in a firefight with some guys, and we weren't really allowed to respond if they got into a firefight, so we just kind of were there.
Yeah.
And so I'm talking to her on the phone, and there's this firefight going off in the background, and she's like, "Hey man, are you okay? Do you gotta go?" I was like, "Yeah, no, they're just shooting at each other." Like,
it's just another day, It's just
it's just another day in Iraq, man. The freaking Iraqi guys, I don't know if they're really having a firefight. I don't know if they're just shooting their guns in the air to scare drivers. Who knows?
Yeah. Holy fuck. Yeah, that's I can't even imagine what your wife was thinking when she was just when it was starting out. She was probably like, what the fuck?
She was a little I don't know. I think she thought that I was mental, and she would have been pretty close to correct, but no.
Well, and how would you say it was for you when you were first getting back to the States? Obviously, that was your first deployment overseas, and then I always express that when you first get back, it's fucking a wonderful feeling after being over there.
Yeah, I mean, after the first tour, it was a pretty wonderful feeling. Happy to be home, happy to enjoy things that America has to offer that over there doesn't. Although I really was not happy about having to pay movie prices because, we had pirated DVDs in Iraq. But I mean, other than that, like it was nice to see people being what the normal for us was.
Yeah.
Girls wearing shorts that were too short, freaking, going out and having a nice big steak, that kind of stuff.
Driving a regular car, just fucking.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the time I had a truck, so I mean, it was regular. Yeah. Going home to see the family on that leave block, that was kind of fun. But realistically, for us, like, I mean, we had that block when we first got home, and of course, absolutely no one in 2004 was paying attention to mental health.
No way.
So there was I think we got home, and I think 2 days later we were on block leave. So I mean, it wasn't like what it is. I still think it is now. I don't know, but like when we came back in 06, you had to be around for like a week and had to do all these briefings and crap before you could go on block leave.
That's wild.
So, but I mean, yeah, man, we just took off, friggin' went home. But when we got back, we probably had like maybe a month or two of like kind of, I wouldn't say screw off time, but it was
Right.
screw off time.
Yeah.
We'd show up, we'd do PT, and because the guys who stayed behind to float back on the boat with all of our gear weren't back yet. Like nobody was there.
Yeah,
there was about half the brigade. So we'd show up, we'd do PT, we might work for an hour or two, and then we'd all just go get drunk.
Fuck yeah.
That was life for those first 3 months. But then as soon as everyone got back and everyone was off leave, we all knew that we were going again soon. So, we picked up the tempo again. I utilized whatever free time that was right then to, my wife and I got married in traditional Army style. Freaking, we met, and 7 months later we were hitched. Yeah, dang. Yeah. And then, had my daughter and had my son. And then just before our first anniversary, my son was born, and I deployed in 0506.
Yeah. Was there any incidents with some of the guys when you guys came back from the first deployment, or was everything? How we were talking. You were saying that there wasn't a lot of mental health highlighting, but like, was everybody okay?
Yeah, they didn't highlight a lot of mental health. And talking to my, because I still talk to some of the boys from back then.
Of course.
There was a lot of stop loss involved in that 03-04 deployment. And so most of the guys I know now who had issues were stop lost. And so it wasn't so much it was the deployment, but it wasn't all of the deployment. It was more or less the, hey, I shouldn't be here,
right,
kind of anger issues and stuff. And the way it worked, man, when we got back, those guys got their 30 days leave of, post-deployment, whatever, leave,
right,
vacation time. And then their stop losses were all lifted, so they all bolted. So before, a lot of them, even if they did have mental health, there would have been no time to address it at all.
Right.
And those of us who were left, like, it's hard to know how much mental health aspects were there, because, infantry, we were all a bunch of raging alcoholics at that point. And then, everybody was just anxious to get back over, realistically, which I think, that in and of itself probably shows a good amount of mental health issues.
Yeah.
But, who wants to run back to war? But yeah, I don't know if there was too much of it. There was probably bits and pieces here or there, but at that point it was still kind of in that stigma life.
Right.
And, I'll readily admit that I probably played into that stigma at the time too, because it's like, well, nothing freaking happened over there. We lost a couple guys, and, there were some guys in the one company who lost, his name totally skips my mind, and it's really peeving me off. But, we lost our boy from Charlie Company, and I know that messed with a few people's heads, but they were more angry and wanted to get over there and,
of course,
gain revenge than they wanted to freaking go see a damn shrink.
Right. It's funny that you say how everybody's just wanting to go back already, because I remember when we got back, and like you said, it's like a month or two of just fucking off time until the whole battalion gets back. But once the fucking retraining starts for that deployment, because we were in my battalion was in a 5-year rotation, so it's like deploy, get back for 11 months.
Yeah, you Marines worked a little bit different than we did.
Yeah, it was just like deploy again, and it's and when we started training, you're just like, fuck, the training is just so much more work than when you're over there. I think they do it
right.
It's almost like, fuck, I can't wait to just get the fuck away from these guys so I can just go and work, because
right.
You just
and it's totally intentional, but it seems like such bullshit.
Oh, it's totally intentional for sure. But honestly, I think that's just,
they're sitting there having us do like freaking 40-mile freaking rucksacks and stuff, and it's like, dude, we're never gonna ruck 40 miles in 120 degree heat. It's just not gonna happen. Why are we doing this bullshit?
It's not very combat effective. but it was just
No.
it was nice to get the fuck back over there, which is again kind of fucking weird that we think that way, but it almost seems like you're just getting away from back in garrison bullshit that is way fucking higher back here in the States than it is.
Right. Well, and I think a bit of it plays into too. I mean, it's, and I'm not going to say it's a mental health issue, but generally speaking, when you're deployed, what's going to happen every day.
Yeah.
I mean, shit might go wrong on a mission or,
Sure.
whatever, but what's going to happen. It's really super easy.
Or what's
mentally,
possibly going to happen. You have an idea.
Hey, I'm going to wake up around such and such a time. I'm going to maybe hit the gym. We're going to go on a mission. I'll catch some freaking chow, and God, I hope they have chocolate milk this time, or, something like that.
Yeah.
And then, I'll rack out freaking, maybe find a clean porta-john if one exists, freaking that kind of stuff. What's going to happen. It's not, hey, I'm going to get up, I'm going to do PT, and then I'm going to work until 4, and 3:30, freaking 9 fragos cover, 9 changes in the daily schedule. Sorry, I did use military lingo.
Yeah, you did.
But 9 things fall downhill, and the next thing you know, you're not getting home till midnight.
Dude. Yeah, I remember I'd say
easy.
Yeah, I remember I
would mentally easy, but
for sure.
Easy.
Yeah, I remember I would say I know what time I'm gonna go into work, but I have no clue what time I'm gonna get out when I'm here back in the States. No clue.
True story.
I know I gotta be up at 5:30 to fucking do accountability formation and then PT, but then besides that, no fucking idea where the day's gonna lead. And over there,
right. And then when you're deployed, if you don't have to be on a mission or doing something, dude, you can rack out all the damn time if you really wanted to.
Yeah, watching fucking movies or either working out, one or the other.
Yeah, I can't say I did too much working out.
Some of us don't, dude, and there's a lot of guys like that too. So you fucking end up going on your second deployment, and where Iraq? I'm guessing same shit.
Yeah, so the second deployment was shitty as hell. We were deployed to a little town called Yusufia, which is down in the Triangle of Death, as they used to call it. It's the lower left-hand corner. The main brigade was up at Mahmudia. My homeboys because I know they're going to watch this eventually, my homeboys in Covert Nation, Charlie Company, were over in the loop. People's Army, that's what we called them, because they just did shit their own way.
Yeah.
Loved them for it. And then our one company with a couple of attachments got sent down to the Yusufia. And Yusufia base was literally nothing more than an old freaking empty potato factory. So we had probably 2 football fields to house 180 guys. And like I think it was probably 75 to 100 group of Iraqi army. So we had those guys on there, but we didn't ever really have those guys on there. We had to maintain that base, and then we had to maintain a bunch of traffic control points, which took an entire platoon. And then we had to manage a old bridge facility that was at the end of that road, which took another company. Or sorry, not another company, another platoon. So we only had about a platoon worth of people on the base at a time, mixed with all of us other assets. Because at that point I had been promoted off the line. I wasn't a line medic anymore. I was in charge of what we called kind of an Atlas team, which is advanced trauma life support. Okay. But realistically, it was the aid station for Bravo Company. So I'd been moved up into that. So we worked in the aid station. But yeah, man, that was a shitty year. We lost number escapes me right now, but I mean, I think we had like almost a 40% attrition rate of either injured or KIA. We lost a shit ton of really good dudes. Shit ton more got injured and never got to come back.
Yeah.
And then we had, we had the handful, I'll say, of dudes who got injured and did get to come back. It was just not a good tour. Everybody's mental health was screwed.
Of course.
I won't go into the story because I don't really have a lot to do with the story, and I probably would not give it justice.
Right.
But there was a book written by, and I know the guy because I did talk to him about some of the stuff in the book. But there's a guy named Jim Frederick. He wrote a book called Black Hearts because that was the patch that we wore on our helmet because everyone at Fort Campbell wore one of the suits from a deck of cards on their helmet.
Yeah.
And we were well known, except for the Rockasons. Those assholes wore a Tory. And Rockasons, y'all can hit me up later. I still don't like you. But
it was a rough one.
But I mean, so we were known as the Black Hearts. And I mean, the end result results in not great leadership, to put it mildly, not at the company level. Our company commander was amazing. But our brigade, our battalion level was not great, didn't support mental health very well.
Yeah.
And there was a platoon of guys who lost a lot of guys, and they kind of lost their shit, and they ended up murdering an Iraqi family. There's a lot more in there. A lot of stuff went into it that's not great.
Right.
So we had some definite struggles, and it was hard being there through all that. It was hard being a medic at that point because we literally we couldn't ever. Our roads weren't really safe enough north of us to ever medevac anybody. So we always had to flight medevac everybody. And we probably had, I would say, guesstimation, because I don't know the numbers and nor do I really want to.
Right.
We probably averaged 1 to 2 mass cows a day.
Fuck.
Now, whether that's not most of them, I will say were not Army, where they weren't our forces.
Sure.
A lot of them were Iraqi Army,
Sure.
but a lot more were civilians.
Yeah.
Because we got mortared every day, and those guys couldn't aim like stormtroopers.
Yeah.
That's what I've always said. They never hit us, but they always hit the kids behind us playing soccer or freaking hit a house or whatever. So I mean, we did a lot of medical treatment on that one. And that's when it was about 3/4 of the way through that deployment, I knew that there was something seriously off in me.
Right.
I lost my compassion. I lost my empathy, which those were things that were always kind of a hallmark staple for me.
Sure.
I just stopped caring. And that was about the time that I attempted suicide the first time.
Was that in Iraq?
Yeah, it was in Iraq. I was getting migraines a lot, which now I know that they're all stress-induced for me. Mm-hmm. Not everybody, but for me. And I was having a really bad migraine one night. I was taking pills that I probably shouldn't have been taking. Opioids and sleeping pills, and those two don't mix really good.
Yeah, sure.
I just decided one night that it was time to be done. I got up in the middle of the night with my migraine. I went to the Porta Johns. Luckily, they had just cleaned them that day. I went in there. I locked the door. I put my 9mm in my mouth. And literally just before I pulled the trigger, someone knocked on the door. I pulled the gun out of my mouth long enough to say, "Hey, someone's in here." And I probably sat there for another 2 or 3 minutes and just could not get the gumption to put the gun back in my mouth and finish it. So I got out and kind of went looking for whoever the hell did it, whoever knocked.
Yeah.
I never could find anybody. So I just holstered my gun and went back to bed.
Fuck.
Cried myself to sleep, but no one at that point, everyone was so tired, no one noticed. And then, woke up a little bit later that day and freaking went on as if everything was fine.
It never happened.
I didn't, even though I was trained in mental health and freaking had all the knowledge, didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to mention to anybody. And at that point in time, my PA had been pulled, physician's assistant had been pulled from our area where he originally was. He had gone back up to help because the aid station there was overloaded. And we did not have an NCO down with us at that moment in time. So at that point in time, I was one of the 2 highest ranking people down there.
Yeah.
And we had already lost one of our medics to injury. So I wasn't going to be the guy who freaking left him with less medics. Because I didn't want to, even though I was ready to kill myself, right? I wasn't ready to leave them and freaking.
Dude,
I was ready to freaking leave them without a medic.
You had a reason, at least. You know what I mean? At least you fucking gave yourself a reason to be like, I can't fucking.
I did come up with a mission, which I think is paramount. But finished that deployment off, and it was shitty all the way up until the end. Came home on mid-tour leave. Sorry, I'm backtracking a little bit, but we came home on mid-tour leave because you guys. I don't know if you guys get mid-tour because you guys
we do shorter
deployments than us. Yeah. So my wife and I were having some issues. So I opted to do my mid-tour leave super early. So they start doing mid-tour for us like 3-4 months in, and I think I was one of the first people to go. So I came home, and it was we left in September. It had to be November, December. I came home.
So was this after you attempted? You attempted?
No. This was before the suicide. Okay. I attempted suicide in February of 2005.
Okay. I just wanted. Get that story.
Yeah, no, I was backtracking on when we lost people, but I mean, I got home and 2 days later, I was sitting in my bed. My wife came up to me and told me that 2 of the guys that I fucking still to this day love more than anybody else on the face of the planet, Sergeant Kasika and Sergeant Nelson. Kasika was always my buddy. He had been there with me in 2003. And Nelson was just the funniest fucking old man. Like, just fucking live that old man lifestyle. Always had a cup of coffee, grumpy as all the time. E6, staff sergeant. But, they were just out manning their traffic control point. Car pulled up and shot them both in the head. And I think that started the spiral really for me, I mean, we were having some troubles at home, but they weren't anything too huge, but I thought that they were, because I wanted to focus on anything other than what was going on in Iraq. We had, right after I got back from mid-tour, one of our medics got killed by an IED. Which fucked me up some. And then, the constant stream of just seeing my buddies get injured and freaking watching them die. And, just watching a bunch of stuff, just really, and kids, man, like seeing kids. Like, I had kids myself. I had 2 at that point. I have 3 now. But watching kids like my kids' ages, like, just royally messed me up.
I'm sure, man. I'm sure, especially you being a parent. We had some cases like that in Iraq where, and they weren't like, the injuries weren't because of us, but it was because of, the shit going on out there.
Yeah, I don't think it matters who did the injury in that case.
Right, and
it's a kid. Yeah. It had nothing to do with any other.
Nothing to do.
Like, there was a couple of times, where I heard, there was once where I saw, like, the kid didn't want to do it, but the kid was being forced to do whatever it may be. And stuff had to happen. And in that case, like, I felt bad for the kid, but at the same point, like, I want my boys being safe.
For sure.
So that wasn't as bad. But seeing kids harmed for no damn reason just really fucking knocked me off my rocker.
Right.
But I mean, I stayed pretty tough. Whether it was real toughness or fake toughness, I still to this day can't tell you. Got home, and that's basically when shit just went all fucking downhill for me. I had a really quick turnaround when I got home. I went on my leave. Things were, and you're on that freaking honeymoon phase of coming home, so everything seemed fine.
Right.
I did start seeing I knew that I was messed up enough that I started seeing the healthcare or the mental health care that was being provided.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really fucking shitty mental health care. They pulled a bunch of doctors up from Nashville to try and help us. And a lot of it was like group therapies and freaking, stuff that I think now is really good. Now that I've delved down,
back on it, yeah.
I'm down the lane a little bit.
Hey man, can we? I gotta make a head call real quick. Can we?
Yeah. Pause.
Yeah, let me pause this real quick. Sorry guys. Boom, and we're back now. So you were talking about how you got back, and that's when you really noticed, I guess, the real fucking effects of the mental health that came from the experiences that you had in your second deployment.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of the
honeymoon phase initially.
I don't want to call it the normal because it's not the normal, but I mean, it's the typical military freaking side effects.
Sure.
Like I was angry all the damn time.
Yeah.
Even doing stuff that made me feel happy inside, I was angry about it. Yeah. Right? Like being with my kids, freaking, spending time with the wife, doing that kind of stuff. I mean, I was always pissed off. I was not sleeping at all. There was a couple stretches where I went like 5-6 days without sleep. Jeez. Just because, I don't need it, didn't realize at the time that it was all hypervigilance and all that other kind of fun stuff.
For sure.
So I started utilizing the services, and like I said, they were piss poor. I mean, not in the way that, like, no one tried to make them piss poor.
Maybe for what it was then, maybe for what what we were aware that came from those experiences.
Right. They were piss poor because they weren't centered around what I think soldiers need.
Sure.
They were centered around, what normal therapeutic processes were at the time. And I mean, this is 2006. Like, we're talking 14 years. Therapy's come a long ways thanks to veterans and first responders and stuff in the past 14 years. Almost past 20 with the 9/11 guys and stuff. But, so they were your typical Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcanon freaking kind of therapies,
right.
Group therapy. Let's all sit around and talk and, that kind of stuff. And that stuff is really good when it's all kind of the same circumstance.
It isn't.
But it wasn't because, you had guys in there, and I'm not, far be it from me to belittle whatever anybody thinks is their trauma, because that's their trauma, that's what they're living with.
It's their experience.
But at the time, we were talking about, losing a multitude of guys, and there were people in there who never once left the freaking green zone, who were, who were having issues with, we got mortared one time.
Right.
It's like, dude, I got mortared daily. What the hell's your problem?
Right.
And that was the mindset that I was in. But and it's not right. But that's where I was.
That mindset. Yeah, that's that mindset. That's the. Yeah.
It's that whole friggin', combat arms versus pogues.
Yeah.
Thing.
I went through worse shit. You didn't go through shit. Right.
Yeah, I mean, you had steak and lobster and shit.
Right. Yeah. And I understand that, because that's a big part of like the when you're in, it's the big fucking I fucking saw combat. How many people want to see combat when you're in the server? How many people are like, let's fucking go get some,
Only us fucked up people.
Yeah, let's fucking go get some. Let's go get some. And then you belittle or you compare your experiences with other people, which isn't necessarily the right thing to do, right? Because that's not helping
Yeah,
anybody.
it's not the right thing to do, but it's just what it is.
Right.
You know, I mean, and everybody does it on a normal scale anyway. Like, you're not going to go freaking tell the guy who freaking works at the Ford factory and works freaking 12-hour shifts that, you know, your life is harder because you work in a freaking bank and freaking hand out freaking
Right.
home loans, right?
Right.
And I mean, it's just everyone's comparing, and it's a natural human reaction to
Sure.
judge and compare, whether it's right or not. But yeah, no, I did that for a little bit before I left Fort Campbell, and then I got to Hawaii, and I think that's when I really noticed how bad it was. I knew something was messed up at Fort Campbell, but I think because there were so many other people who were going through the same things, that it seemed normal.
Right.
And then I got to Hawaii, and you know, nothing against any of the people I worked with in the hospital, but 95% of them had never deployed.
Sure.
And there was this weird mixture because, of course, you know, the hospital doesn't run just on military personnel. There's a shit ton of civilians.
Yeah.
And so they have no clue what you've been through. And, you know, the nurses, God love them, but they don't know what you've been through.
Right.
And the doctors sure shit don't. You know, so there was a lot of animosity and stuff there. And it probably took me a good, let me see here. It was almost exactly 11 months from when I got to Hawaii until I got put in the psych ward. You know, I threatened to kill one of our nurses to someone else, and so she still to this day doesn't know that I threatened to kill her. But I did,
Yeah.
and they told me that I either needed to find something or find some help,
Right.
which I was already seeking at that point. But you know, the mental health clinics were over full, kind of like the VA now. And yeah, so I found this really awesome program that the VA has in some places for retired and active duty guys, called the PRRP program.
You have to send me a link to that, man, so I can put it on here.
I don't even know if I would do so, and I'll look it up after we're done. I'm not even 100% certain that it still exists because there's so many other new programs out.
Okay, that's fair.
But it was an 8-week intensive inpatient, so we had to stay on the psych ward. You know, we did some like going out kind of stuff, like we went to AA, freaking out in the community, and some other stuff. But I mean, we're talking 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. therapy for 8 weeks. And that's what really started me on getting better.
What was the main focus on that therapy? Like, what were some approaches that they did to help?
It was multi-focused.
Okay.
You know, they did some, you know, they did some drug management, medical management. They did a lot of mindfulness type training, sleep therapy. They tried a little bit of like every friggin' famous friggin' therapy that we all have available to us now. You know, the eye movement desensitization, friggin' talk therapy, visualization, cognitive processing. We did a little bit of everything. There wasn't anything that we like honed in on 100%.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, that did a world of good for me. There was a lot of things that changed because, you know, right before that, you know, I was so angry I had threatened to kill somebody, and then I had tried to commit suicide one more time in that period of time, which was that's funny as shit. So my wife is apparently listening to us outside the room here somewhere. She just sent me the link for the PRP.
Look at that.
I'm pretty loud though too.
That's fine. So am I.
But yeah, I tried to overdose on pills before that.
What would you say triggered that? Was it you just fucking? Were you just tired?
It was all depression. I wasn't, you know, I was I was still not getting along with my wife.
Yeah.
I had some addictions that were like weren't anything within my character.
Sure.
Drinking all the time, taking pills all the time.
Yeah.
I'd freaking sit around and rather look at freaking dirty pictures than freaking look at my wife.
Yeah.
Just the silly shit.
Right.
Didn't want to do anything, didn't want to hang out with the kids. And if I did hang out with the kids, I was always getting mad at them.
Yeah.
And the weird, I don't think it's weird, truthfully, but like the difference between what I've found talking to a lot of other people is even in my depression and my bad stuff, I was never like that in public.
Yeah.
Like I could go out and I never have ever had the crowd issues.
Did you put up a front or something? Is that what it was? Like you were just like,
it was a mask.
I'm good.
Yeah, totally a mask.
Yeah. That's weird, huh?
But I could go to work and I'd have no problem. And everyone thought at work that I was like this happy-go-lucky dude. And freaking, I took my kids to University of Hawaii football games and stuff like that. But I was a complete ass at home. Like I took everything out of my wife and kids. I didn't want to be home because that's what scared me. Being home was where my fears were.
Yeah.
Because that's where the nightmares happened. That's where I was a freaking complete asshole. Luckily I had a couple of really good friends. One of my sergeants, and then Sergeant Barbie, dude, was amazing. And then freaking couple other vets who got there about the same. Well, one of them was there a little bit before me, and one of them came a little bit after me, but they were combat medic vets too, so that we kind of talked through some stuff. And then I moved from the cardiac floor to the intensive care unit once they put me on a profile that I wasn't allowed to. I found out in the meantime that I had actually fractured my back when I got blown up in Iraq. I hadn't known that. So I wondered kind of, because I went from being 6'4" to being 5'11".
Holy fuck!
But,
you shrunk.
My back's really compressed.
Yeah.
Really compressed. But I'm still up and I'm walking. So as far as the injury goes, it sucks. My back hurts all the time, but I can still walk.
Yeah.
So I'm fine. I'm a lot better than some people.
It's that comparison again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had some good people, but they took me off of the floor because I couldn't draw blood anymore without having freaking freakouts. I couldn't freaking really do a lot. So they moved me over to the intensive care unit in kind of an admin type role. And that's where I met my really good buddy Miramonte. Sergeant Miramonte, he freaking was on me like freaking white on rice. Freaking making sure that I was going to my mental health appointments and checking in with me all the time. And going through my med board, which was incredibly stressful because you never know what the hell they're really going to do. And then, October of 2009, I got home for good. I had already set up a civilian job because I knew, because luckily, I guess, because the VA in Hawaii is co-located with the hospital, most of my VA stuff was already done when I got out, which is, I know, absolutely not the norm.
Not at all.
So,
That's awesome.
I came home and had to do the C&P exam.
Yeah, you go there and they come and check you, and then
the comprehension exam, where they go through all the official stuff and give you a rating.
Right.
But I'd already gotten a job lined up working as a medical administrator with a really good company. So literally, I came home, I took like a week off, and I went straight back to work.
So I want to get back to you getting close to your end of active service. So when you were about to get out of the service, would you say that you had the time and everything that you needed to do to prepare yourself for the civilian world? It sounds like you did if you set yourself up. No? Okay.
So the answer is yes and no.
Right.
Luckily for me, like I had the VA side of it locked up.
Right, which is one big portion of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a big portion of it, but at the same point, like, it's only so much, right?
Sure, for sure.
I mean, no, and I mean, I had to go through the army stuff. Like, I mean, Army has the AW2 program, the Army Wounded Warrior program, which I think every service has some sort of version of it, where they have some classes that are available but not mandatory, and they can help you with resumes and just do different stuff like that. And I mean, I utilize them for like some resume help and a couple of like mental health follow-up classes.
Sure.
And, you know, I mean, they helped my wife write a resume too, from being because my wife was a house mom for, 7 years. And so they helped her. And I wish I still had the resume, because it was one of the funniest things that you could, like, not that being a house mom's easy. It's not. It's the hardest damn job in the world. But man, they jazzed the shit out of it. They were like, "Oh, manage the mail for a group of 5 and this, that, and the other thing." It was
upsold,
so awesome.
Man. Upselling.
But then they stick you in what Army calls the ACAP program, which is the transition classes that you have to go to before you get out.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we had to do like a week of them. And I won't even lie, I think I went to 2 days and I was like, screw this shit. I'm not even coming back. They wanted you to do resume writing, and they wanted you to do like
mock
interviews.
Yeah.
And I went to the person on the second day and I was like, look, here's my resume and I already have a job.
Yeah.
Why do I have to sit through this stuff?
Right.
And they basically told me I didn't have to. But I mean, they don't do anything, and they still don't.
No,
because I've talked to people who've gotten out in the past couple of years. They don't teach you how to act.
No way.
Like, you can't go to a business and be a supervisor and freaking start chewing your subordinate out, because you're gonna get fired.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna get written up. You can't freaking curse like you do in the military. You can't freaking our dark humor and our dirty jokes. I mean, they're awesome, but I can't freaking tell this to a coworker or even a freaking regular civilian friend most of the time.
Yeah, they'll be like, "What the fuck?"
Then they're gonna bake correct you just based on the fact that you have a dirty mouth.
Yeah.
They don't teach you how to. They definitely don't teach you how to de-soldier, which I think is the biggest fatal flaw that the military has nowadays. And I think that that's a huge, I'm not going to say the primary reason, but it's a huge reason in the freaking suicide numbers that we have.
Look, man,
because people get out, they don't know what to do without a mission.
There's this journalist, Sebastian Junger. I'm reading his book. Have you heard of him?
Yeah. Oh man, I love Younger.
Yeah. So I met him. You met the man?
Yeah.
Holy shit, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So
he did a talk up in Gainesville.
Yeah, I recently saw one of his TED Talk videos, and he's talking about post-deployment alienation, and that made me think, what if? Because he said we could potentially be calling PTSD, we could be using the wrong term, right? Because there is PTSD, but I think there's also a post-service alienation where it's like you're so used to living this lifestyle and being around these specific people and just being a part of the tribe, like he says, and then you get out of the.
I'm going to grab something from my bookshelf.
Yeah, no worries.
Keep talking.
Yeah. So he's saying that that when we get out, that you just come out to a community that isn't anywhere near that has that same tribal effect that you have in the military, and that they don't really teach on how that works and how you can, I don't know, normalize coming back. He was
horrible job.
Yeah, they do a terrible job at getting you guys used to coming back into the civilian world and getting used to how it actually is out here, because you're so used to a tight community in the service, you fucking make bonds that are tighter than your fucking family.
Right.
So I think that's...
And actually that's funny, because that's the book that I got up to look at, and I must have handed out my last paper copy, because I always keep my copy on my Audible account. Yeah. But his book, Tribe, I think Tribe should be required reading for military members getting out.
Dude, I started it. I haven't finished it, but holy fuck. Holy
you know,
fuck.
because it's exactly what we're going through.
Yeah.
You know, he talks in there a lot about how, like, you know, the Native American population and how, I mean, he doesn't coordinate it with the military because I
Right.
don't think he's trying to like sectionalize,
Right.
but it rings so true that we're so tight bond that I mean, you could be the biggest screw up in the military
Mhm.
and you're still going to be accepted on some level.
Oh, for sure. For
You
sure.
know, like you could be the biggest shitbag on the face of the planet,
Yeah.
and you could go to a bar and freaking someone start a fight with you, and it's like, well, I'm gonna beat the
yeah.
hell out of that dude because that's my brother you're
Yeah.
messing with.
I still got his back.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not like that in the civilian world.
Not at all. Not at all.
You know, the tribe aspect is, I mean, for all intents and purposes, without getting too philosophical or anything, it's gone.
Oh yeah.
You know, they don't. That's not how the normal humanity freaking works anymore.
It's a very isolated fucking community that we have here. It's not. I wouldn't even call it a community. I mean, it's just everybody's just kind of individuals, and you're doing.
Depends on where you are and where you live.
Sure.
You know, I think there's still community aspects, but it's more
smaller towns, maybe.
Might be the word that I'm looking for. I mean, like, you know, for me, like I have lots of communities, but I don't belong to one.
Right.
You know, because otherwise I don't think it works anymore. Right. You can't belong to just one, like the old days where it's like, hey, I'm from the city of this,
right,
and we're all one big community and we help each other out. That stuff doesn't roll anymore. So you have to be a member of different communities, like or different tribes, whether it's your friggin' church, whether it's your friggin' veteran community, whether it's friggin', you know, my kids' dance community, friggin' whatever,
right.
You know, and that's where you build up a community feeling. But the overall arching freaking idea of community, nah, that shit's dead.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything
in America.
Yeah,
in America.
Yeah.
After being in Germany for a couple of years, it's not dead over there.
Really?
So Europe has it in some cases.
Yeah. He also mentioned what was it, Israel? He was mentioning Israel as an example where everybody is forced to go to fucking into the service. It's mandatory. Yep. So they all share one common stress. They all share that. They can all relate when it comes to that form of fucking
right.
community, right?
From the freaking poorest bastard to, well, not always the richest, but most of the richer ones, everyone has to go through at least one thing that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's not normal, but it's a normal.
Right. And he's saying that their suicide rate is way lower than it is here in the States.
Yeah, I think for them it's like almost nil.
Yeah, they were talking. He was also talking about how the casualties and the injuries of war have been reduced drastically, but the PTSD amongst the military has gone up like fucking 90% or whatever it is. You know, it's just. I'm sorry, we went off a little bit, but
I mean, it's not off. It's exactly what we're talking about.
Right. Though. Right, for sure.
What we're here to talk about, at least.
Yeah. So you had your job lined up. You went to fucking work. And how was it after getting out?
So it was horrible.
Sure.
You know, like I loved being out. I loved all the freedoms of not having to wake up at freaking 5 o'clock in the morning anymore. You know, I went and did my job, and I was pretty damn proficient at my job.
Sure.
Because of the discipline and everything the military taught me. But at the same point, like I wasn't very. It took me a long time to finally come to the realization of I don't need to be an asshole all the time to get shit done.
Yeah.
So I would say by the time I was done there, because I stayed at that job for a year, and I'll explain more here in a second. But when I left that job, about half of my people loved me, and the other half fucking hated.
They were
yeah. There was like, oh no, they didn't. I don't think they thought I was a douchebag. I think they just thought I was an asshole. Because I made them work.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I required. I wanted you to do your damn job.
Right.
My supervisors all loved me because friggin', my people got their jobs done.
Yeah.
At the same time, they didn't like me because I'm not a toe the line kind of guy. So if the supervisors brought up something and I thought it was stupid, then I told them it was stupid.
Yeah.
I didn't work real well in corporate America. So, that's, and it was about 8 months into that year that I made a decision that there was like, I couldn't continue in civilian sector.
Right.
There was no way. So I got with, there's a group out there called Hire Heroes. They help find veterans jobs, and they also help like get veterans into GS jobs, government service jobs.
Oh, that's cool. Hire Heroes, you said?
Yeah, Hire Heroes. What's his name? The old UFC fighter who was a Marine, Stan. I think he's on their board of directors. Brian Stan. But yeah, I got with them, and they got my resume out there, and I got a fucking weird ass phone call one day from an international phone number, and I was like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
And there was a lieutenant colonel on the other end, and he's like, "Hey man, I see you're looking for a job," and I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, it says you're only looking for a job on the East Coast." And I was like, "Yeah, we're trying to stay on the East Coast because it's close to my wife's family, and whatever." Because we were looking like DC down.
Right.
And he's like, "Well," he's like, "I'm just calling because you fit the bill for it, but I got a job here in Germany that you would be perfect for." And I was like, "Well, damn, never been to Germany." So, suffice it to say, after talking with my wife and all that kind of stuff, I took a GS job in friggin' Germany, and we left a month later.
Oh, shit. Wow.
So, yeah, the 5 of us packed up, and with the dog, my now 14-year-old dog, who's been more places than most humans,
Right.
packed up and moved to Germany for 3 years. And I was a glorified secretary for those 3 years. And I loved it in the case of like, you were almost kind of back with the military. I mean, I was working with the supply chain and the finance chains in the military. So, and most of the people that I worked with were they were all military-ish. They were either former military members or they were family members of the military. Right. So they all, or they had worked for the military for so long that they'd been militarized. Yeah. Or they were German because we had German nationals, but they were all they were awesome. Yeah. The only thing that made me not continue in the GS life was there wasn't really a whole lot more room for advancement for me. And we realized how much we really missed family, which had never been an issue with me. Right. I missed my mom and dad and, missed my grandparents and stuff, but I was so used to that military nomad life that I was like, dude, I don't miss nobody that much. Yeah. My wife and kids missed having family around, and I missed them being happy about having family around. And it's not exactly the cheapest thing in the world for family to just up and hop on a plane to Germany. Yeah. So instead of continuing GS life, and during that time in Germany, literally, there were times where I thought I was unhappy. But looking back, I wasn't really unhappy. I was just somewhat bored at points with work, right? Because it wasn't, that stimulating of a job all the time. Sure. But my mental health was on point because I was happy. I was working out. I was doing some school. Me and my wife and kids had freaking, I don't know if you know GS jobs, but GS gets paid pretty decent. Yeah. We had money that they paid for our housing and everything because I was a high enough GS. So it was almost like being back in the money. So being back in the military. So whatever money you made was just yours. Well, sure, yeah. So we traveled, we got to do all sorts of stuff. And so I thought that it was, I thought my mental health was totally on point. Right. And then I came back and I went back to work for the exact same company that I had left, that I didn't like, but they were kind of that negative that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I quickly realized that my mental health wasn't still on par, and I had quit doing mental health services like therapy and all that kind of stuff. Probably 4 years earlier, I'd gotten off that I was on because when I quit my meds, I was probably on I don't know, a handful a day. I don't know what the number is.
Yeah.
But it was enough to fill my freaking big ass palm. You know, but I got off all of them. Probably not the right way of doing things, but I thought I was doing okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when I got home and I realized that stress and everything was still hugely taking a toll, the nightmares had never really left. But I was so used to not sleeping by that point, like, you know, it was normal, but it wasn't functional.
Yeah.
It wasn't functional. So that's when I started back with, I got in with the VA and started doing mental health therapy here. And I got in with the Wounded Warrior Project, which I know does, well, I never have a bad thing to say about them, but some people have issues.
Sure.
You know, and I guess that really depends on where you are, truthfully. And I think it's a fair thing to say about the VA too.
Definitely.
Because I can honestly say that my clinic here is pretty damn decent. I've never really had too much of an issue with them. You know, a few workers here or there that you want to smack in the face, but you know, nothing big. The hospitals are not good.
No.
You know, I'm not going to go have surgery with the VA any damn time soon.
No.
But you know, I've never really had a problem. But the Wounded Warrior Project, I started doing a couple things. I did get a service dog at one point.
How was that?
Quickly, he was really good.
Yeah.
You know, I loved having the service dog, but I quickly realized that my lifestyle and a service dog don't go incredibly well together. And I think that took a lot for me to realize, because I mean, I have no issues with service animals at all. I think they're an amazing application, amazing resource for people. But at the same point, like, I think if you do not utilize them correctly, they become a very heavy crutch that people lean on too much. And I mean, the same could be said about almost anything.
Pills,
you know,
anything like that.
You know, freaking pills, alcohol, freaking video games, sports, whatever.
Anything.
But I realized that I was not necessarily utilizing him the right way, and because I was so active in doing things, you know, I mean, don't get me wrong, he loved going in the car and he loved all that stuff, but I did a lot of outdoorsy stuff in Florida, and he was a friggin' heavy-haired black lab. So going and sitting in concrete friggin' stadiums outside to listen to music or watch soccer games or something like that, you know, where he has to sit on hot boiling concrete for 3+ hours at a time.
Yeah.
And then we mixed it in with, we found out my daughter, my oldest daughter, is heavily allergic to long-haired pet dander.
Yeah.
So, you know, that kind of was the breaking point. And I was like, look, I can't put him through this. I can't put my daughter through this. So, you know, I'm going to have to learn how to manage without him. And so
would you say that it definitely helped though?
Yeah, oh yeah, he was definitely helpful.
Yeah.
There were a few, and I'll readily admit that I was not necessarily the most studious in keeping him trained all the time, which you have to be on top of him.
Right.
So there were some issues where he would, you know, occasionally not listen, and he'd freaking bolt out the back door to go play, and like I didn't have a fence at the time, so like he freaking took off, and I'd have to go fucking chase him down and shit.
Right.
You know, one time at work, he decided that I let him have breaks. So I took the vest off of him, and I was just walking him around, and he saw a squirrel, and no vest means fun time.
Went after it.
So he took off after that squirrel, and friggin' we ended up having to call the cops, and the freaking cops had to help me find him, and he was like 2 blocks away at a fucking Home Depot. that was all my fault, realistically. But I ended up working with a couple of other people, and we found him a good home with another vet who freaking still utilizes him to this day. Not in the daily service dog type life, but he's a very good emotional support animal for the guy, and he's doing wonderful. So that's awesome. But yeah, I tried utilizing that, and then I did some other therapies. I was going to therapy weekly with my VA therapist, and then I started looking into some other stuff. But I was starting to have really bad nervous breakdowns, which I hadn't ever really had before. I started doing some mindfulness at work because work was stressing me out horribly. But I found it started happening like I would take my time at lunch and I would kind of shut my office door and I would turn on some music and do my mindfulness exercises and stuff like that. Yeah. And it started turning into, as soon as I shut the door, like I would crawl under my desk and fucking cry and have nervous breakdowns and stuff like that. So we started working. My VA was only at I think I was at 60% VA. So we started working on trying to see what we could do to, get me rated the right way, because I didn't feel I was rated correctly. And
like most of us, right?
It's one of those. And this is another complaint that I have in the transition life is, they want you to transition and they want you to do all these great and wonderful things, which is totally okay for 95% of people. Sure. Okay, I'm not going to say that all the vets who are out there who have different issues all need to be rated 100%, because I don't think that's correct.
Right.
But at the same point, like the people who do need 100% or do need even like 80 or 90, have to fight so hard for that. And how do you have time to fight when you also have to provide for a family?
Yeah.
Like that was my biggest hardship. I was trying to fight for a little bit better of a percentage, and then but you're working 40, 50 hours a week, and you're trying to do family time, and you're trying to fight for yourself. And at this point because this was 2000 out 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it was like 2013 or so. There still weren't a lot of way out there being publicized groups. Like the American Legion was helping people with VA, but if you were already rated, you kind of fell to the bottom of the list because they were trying to help all the vets getting out.
Sure.
The DAV, those kind of places. Wounded Warrior Project didn't have their freaking group together 100% yet to start doing the VA percentages, which they do now. And there were other groups doing it, but there weren't ones that I knew of, right? Because like I kind of isolated myself away from the veteran community a little bit more, because being with them at that point in time triggered more shit than it freaking helped.
Right.
But yeah, so I started doing that stuff, and it got to the point where like my therapist basically looked at me and she's like, "Look, man, I don't know what you have to do, but you gotta quit. You can't keep working right now." He's like, you're gonna commit suicide again, or you're gonna try to commit suicide again, or something like that. Yeah. And she's like, you have to leave this job. And I was, and my throw up all the time was, if I leave my job, I can't provide for my family.
Right.
Like, what the hell do you want to do?
Yeah.
So as I guess luck would do it, I went on this program for the Wounded Warrior Project that they have called Project Odyssey, which is a phenomenal resource. They basically take anybody who is, they can be injured, they can have PTSD, they can have TBI, any of that kind of stuff. And they take them on a week-long, it's a week-long retreat. And they teach coping mechanisms and some other stuff like that. They do a couple of other things, like we went whitewater rafting on ours.
Nice.
I mean, they do sort of the fun, cool guy shit too.
Yeah.
But it was on there that I learned about, I think it's called CSRP, the combat related pay scale.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, and I don't know if it's the same for you or whoever it is, but like if you're medically retired from the military, you're supposed to get a certain amount of your paycheck, right?
Right.
But if your VA rating is higher than that, then you don't get that military retire. You don't get your military retirement, which is what I was facing. And so, but if you were combat related medically retired, you're supposed to get both. And of course, no one had ever told me that.
Of course.
So someone on that thing mentioned it, and I filed for it, and I went on that thing in like 2014.
Mm-hmm.
And 2015 is when I was having all my issues. And as luck would have it, my freaking CSRP got authorized, and they backdated it all the way to the day that I got out of the military.
Yeah, dude.
So I got like this nice little chunk of change. And I mean, I retired as an E4, so like my retirement's nothing,
Sure.
But backdating me a whole lot of nothing is still a little bit.
Yeah, it adds up.
So it was just enough that my wife and I were okay to, Jesus Christ, she's listening to me. It's called CRSC, Combat Related Special Compensation.
Get that shit right, brother.
And we got and we got 15K back. But it was enough that we could live for a few months and kind of figure out what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Because the big issue with me was like, I kept filing for like Social Security and that kind of stuff. Well, Social Security is like, well, you're working. Why do you need us? And It's like, well, I need you. I can not have to work.
Right.
Like my parents were telling me.
Mm-hmm.
But they got that. And then for me, like, I had to fight. Hold on.
Yeah, you're good.
Sorry, you can see the dirty habit, people.
Yeah, it is.
But I mean, I had to fight for it. I had to get the judge and the freaking lawyers involved and stuff like that. But I got my Social Security, and then magically the VA notices that if you get Social Security, you're automatically VA approved.
What?
So,
the VA.
So a little side note for anybody watching: if you're trying to go for your 90 or 100% VA, if you get Social Security, they won't even fight you. They'll just make you have freaking percentage.
Listen up, people.
It was crazy.
Yeah, holy shit.
But, so I mean, all that happened, and then after that, like I retired 2015, about mid-year, and that's when I just started, like, I threw everything I had into my mental health. I mean, I think I took like a month off to do nothing but play video games and drive my kids to work. But I threw everything I had into mental health. Like, I was going to therapy, and I was trying to find new ways of therapy. I started looking up like Eastern philosophies, because a lot of them focus on mindfulness and stuff like that, and they work really, really well for me. And then, I started doing some of my work that I still do to this day, the suicide mentoring for the Wounded Warrior Project. So basically, on these Project Odysseys and some of the other stuff that they do, they like to bring along someone who's been through the same stuff and is in, I wouldn't ever say that it's because I'm in a better place. I mean, even though I'm in way better of a place than I was.
Yeah.
They don't put you in it just because you're in a better place. They put you in it because you're attempting to do the work.
Right.
So, they invited me to come on a couple of them, and I started going on them. And then, unfortunately, in 2018, so about 2 years ago, maybe 27. I'm waiting for my text message to tell me.
To correct you.
Yeah, my mom passed away from cancer.
Man, I'm sorry.
at like 54. So it was real young.
Yeah.
So like that just destroyed me because my mom, other than my wife who's listening, my mom was my best friend growing up, and she was always like my biggest supporter.
Of course.
Sometimes to an annoyance, but you know, what kid isn't annoyed by their mom being a
Yeah, that's a mother, dude.
But yeah, no, she was awesome. She always supported me, loved my kids, loved my wife. You know, but losing her freaking threw me down the spiral and realized it made me realize that at this point I gained the emotional intelligence to maybe not always be able to stop the things that were going on,
Sure.
but at least notice them. So I realized that I was still in a really bad place. I contemplated suicide again, but talked myself out of it, thankfully.
Yeah.
And then I utilized the last big mental health resource that I had left. I mean, there's still plenty of others now.
Sure.
But I mean, it's a resource in and of itself, but the Wounded Warrior Project has connections with it. There's a program up in Boston called Home Base.
Home Base?
Home Base. Yeah. It's ran by the Red Sox Foundation. So, you know, for all you Yankees fans, I'm sorry. But and it's a super intensive mental health workshop, basically. You fly up to Boston, you stay in Boston for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's all up at Mass General Hospital. And you are, again, like, it's like my PRP, but it was on steroids because it was another 15 years of freaking therapy, freaking understanding.
Yeah.
But you were in therapy from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. for 12 days. And when you get done with it, like the numbers are something crazy. Like it's like 4 years, 2 years, something like that of therapy in 2 weeks.
Jeez. Okay.
You know, but like you're doing individual therapy, you're doing MRIs to make sure that your TBI is friggin' being taken care of. They give you tools to take care of, you know, your TBI, your anger, your freaking organizational habits. They do some training on like crowd desensitization and freaking, you know, living life mindfully and paying attention to the little things that matter that can help offset the little things that anger you. Mm-hmm. And they were so phenomenal. Like that was, I'll never ever forget this shit. So by that time, I probably hadn't cried or shown that emotion in, I'd say, pretty close to 20 years, other than, you know, like I cried a few times when different guys died or whatever, but like, that was like super build-up crying. Yeah. But like I didn't cry from like emotions, the actual sadness in so long. And the second day is when you meet your therapist up there, and she looked at me and she's like, "Look, man, I'm telling you, I'm good at my job, so we're gonna do this one way or another." Yeah. And I was like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." I've always been kind of shrinks don't like me sometimes because I have just enough training in psychology to be dangerous. Like I already kind of know where they're going.
Yeah, you know what they're trying to go for. You know, like the buttons
so,
they're trying
you know, I'm to tell them what they want to hear and that kind of stuff. Until you find the one that can call bullshit on you, which I mean, luckily my VA one was good at calling bullshit on me, and this one was really good at calling bullshit on me. But no, I've gone to that program like just totally open and like, look, I'm gonna beat this shit. Yeah. I have to for my family, you know, because you know, I mean, my family's always been super, super supportive. Right. But I don't want to support a family that I've ostracized. You know, it's like, hey, yeah, oh yeah, we love my dad, but he's an asshole all the time. I don't want that. Yeah. You know, I mean, they say that now, but you know, but at the same point, like, so I went in and like day 2 after meeting her, dude, I'm sitting on that couch just all newborn baby. And I mean, that's really when it opened for me. Like, I freaking started paying attention to my emotions more, stuff like that. And I mean, I still have lapses, you know, and there's all, you know, you're never going to be perfect. But, you know, and then after that, like, I just decided to go headlong into doing whatever I could, you know, to realizing that I was in a better place than I used to be. So that's when I went into, you know, trying to do what I can for other veterans, because I mean, that's my background, you know.
Fucking
Medic
awesome.
in me always wants to take care of Joe.
Yeah.
So, you know, I go on these retreats with the Wounded Warrior Project. I've done a little bit of work with some other groups.
Yeah.
You know, Mission 22, done some stuff with them. I'm just throwing these out there as resources, not to boast, because I don't care about my boasting. But Mission 22 is a really good resource for veterans for all sorts of different things, whether it be, you know, just they can help out with some other stuff, but they do some mental health stuff. They do just group things to get people to have camaraderie together. You know, I used to work for, there's a group out in Oklahoma called Warriors for Freedom. So if anybody's actually out in Oklahoma and Texas area, they're a really good resource out there. But they used to have a conjunction with Remembering the 22, which for as far as I know is a charity that's not really doing a lot right now, because the founder was Chris Dolman, who used to play for the Minnesota Vikings. He's an NFL Hall of Famer. But Chris unfortunately passed away last year from brain tumors, so not much has really happened since he was sick.
Right.
But we did a lot of speaking with you know, the NFL, and did some stuff like that to try to raise awareness and get people to help fund the different groups that, you know, do provide services for the veteran community, because not all of them are money stacked, obviously.
Right, definitely.
You know, I mean, there are some 501c3s out there that are really well funded. Wounded Warrior Project is definitely one of those.
Right.
You know, but then there's other ones that are out there that are small and are really dependent on, and they have really freaking good programs. They just have really freaking good donors.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, but I mean, and I've seen a lot of stepping up in the past 10 years too. I mean, there's lots of celebrities who've gotten on board, and whether they're getting on board for the right reasons or not could always be argued. But realistically, I don't give a crap what tax write-offs they get, as long as freaking people are getting help.
Definitely. Yeah.
You know, and freaking couple of my boys will beat me. There's a really good resource up in Georgia that the Zach Brown band freaking runs, whose name freaking totally eludes me at the moment. But it's kind of a Project Odyssey type thing too. They bring you up there for a week, and there's training on coping skills and tools, and you know, you do some outdoorsy kind of crap, you know, fun stuff, because you need to be able to do that. You have to be able to reset at times.
Definitely.
But you know, there's lots of good stuff out there, and I think realistically, you know, the biggest two things that I say to everybody, and I'm not saying we're after this, my story's kind of just, I'm here now. The two takeaways that I always want to tell everybody is there's two things. One is, it's a quote that I read somewhere, and it's always stuck with me, is you're not responsible for your wounds, but you are responsible for the healing. And the second part is no matter how many groups are out there, there's hundreds of thousands of groups out there who are willing to, but you have to advocate for yourself.
Yeah.
Have to be your own friggin' driving force, because I wouldn't be anywhere near where I am if I hadn't taken some motivation. And at times, my wife freaking put a boot up my ass to freaking get me motivated.
Good. You're about to get a text.
Yeah, probably. But, you know, like, if you're not out there fighting for yourself, the VA can send you to all sorts of stuff. The, you know, different groups like the Project or friggin', you know, whatever, can send you to all sorts of stuff. you can go to all these freaking mental health camps. You can do all that stuff, but if you're not actually doing any of the work, then it's freaking, one, you're freaking wasting your time.
Yeah.
Two, you're wasting somebody else's money.
Yeah.
And three, you're wasting a slot or freaking time that another veteran is motivated. If you're going to utilize this stuff, utilize it. Freaking, It's awesome. It's amazing. Get yourself some help. That's what we need. But don't let it be a crutch, and don't be, at the side of sounding crass. Don't be that guy who's just in it for the freaking swag.
Right.
Like, oh yeah, well, you go on this thing, you get to go on a free hunt and they give you free guns and blah blah blah. Okay, well that's great, but that's not what it's about.
Right.
Like, it's not about a t-shirt.
It's a resource. It's a resource.
It's a resource. It's not a freaking handout.
Yeah.
If they give you a handout, then they give you a handout. You don't argue it, but freaking at the same point, freaking don't go on it just for.
Right. Somebody else could be using that, and that could potentially, really help them get out of the, that slog that they're in, and fucking help them get better. Not necessarily just get better, but even if they just get out of that one very difficult moment that we experience, and then, like you were saying, it comes back in waves now. It's not as bad as it once was, but it definitely comes back in waves. But you can acknowledge that it's happening, and you can fucking potentially do some exercises that can get you through that funk.
Right. And I've always, and I say it to veterans now when I do the different work and stuff like that, like, you go on these retreats or you go on whatever, and you are always going to be inundated with information.
Yeah.
And you're never, ever going to be able to pull every little bit of information out of it. But if you go to a therapy session, or if you go to one of these retreats, or you go to, even online therapy or whatever it may be, a veterans freaking get together or something like that, you're going to get 100,000 resources. You're going to get 100,000 freaking different ways of freaking helping yourself. And that's great. That's what we're here for. And that's what the brotherhood, sisterhood, family, whatever you want to call it, is still for. I mean, and that's what we're supposed to do, take care of each other.
Definitely.
But at the same point, like, you don't have to understand all of them.
Yeah.
Take one thing away. Take one thing that helps you, whether it be a resource, whether it be a different mind frame. Take one thing, and that one thing,
go for it. Try it. See,
Al Pacino in the freaking any given Sunday thing, like, every inch equals a mile.
Yeah.
You fight for that 1 foot, 1 yard, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah, whatever the fuck that quote is. But yeah, man, I get what you're saying. But with all this being said, I think you've done a good job at showing a lot of resources, and obviously sharing your experience in the service and the difficulties that you went through. Again, I want to say I really appreciate you being fucking on here. I'm gonna try to get all these resources that you named on the description, so if everybody else wants to try to check them out for your own use, I'm gonna attempt my best to get these in the description. And is there anything you want to say to your fellow brothers and boys out there before we end this thing?
You cut out there at the last second.
Shit. I'm saying, is there anything that you want to say to your boys or anybody out there?
Everybody out there, freaking keep doing what you're supposed to be doing. Freaking get yourself some help. Freaking, my family, I love you.
Oh, of course, it's gonna cut out towards the end. Great.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
Man, just everybody, I love you guys. If anybody needs help, reach out to me through freaking Caesar. Freaking do what you got to do. Freaking, I'm here for a resource for everybody. I'll do whatever I can to help anybody nationwide. Freaking, as best I can. I have my limits just like anybody else does. Luckily, I'm good at telling them what they are nowadays. And thank you, man. Freaking, not too many people are reaching out, asking for our stories, trying to get them out there to freaking get vets some help. So I think it's an admirable cause.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
I dig it, man.
Thank you.
When you produce this one, I'll freaking send this and some other links out to some of my other people, and hopefully we can get you to grow a little bit and freaking a little more mainstream. Freaking up in spaces.
Get the message out there. You know what I mean? I'm
not sure how many jarheads we really want on the front lines of freaking life, but we'll let you.
Right. Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate it.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be a good person.
I appreciate you coming on here and telling your story again. Thanks everybody for watching. If you enjoy it, feel free to like, subscribe. Peace out, brother. Thanks again.